Folks, welcome back once again to the Friday Flows. I'm Cameron here from Tynes. I'm on the planet Namek, and we're about to go Super Saiyan on a couple of workflows. Today's story that we're particularly looking at is obviously the most time consuming one for teams that we typically talk to, which is phishing response. And we're going to be using our friends at Recorded Future to do enrichment on the IOCs after we've parsed up all of them when we pull the email into Tynes. This is a really, really great episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get into it. But today, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be showing you basically a phishing response workflow that includes our partners over at Recorded Future. I think just before I hand over to Karl, like the main thing is, especially with phishing, time consuming, very tedious to handle yourself manually, usually requires you to have multiple tabs open. And yeah, can be one of those big, significant, you know, attributors to teams getting burnt out and feeling like they're kind of bogged down in noise. So there's a lot of benefit to automating this workflow. And I suppose with that in mind, Karl, I'll hand it over to you. What are we going through? Give us a look, give us a gander.
Will do. Thanks, Cam. So yeah, look, that's a good point you made there. It is a great time consumer, I suppose. Like having dealt with lots of customers, I hear them telling me phishing can take 10 minutes to an hour per email, depending on what it is they're doing, what they're analyzing, how much content they're looking at. And also the other thing I always mention, this automation is a great thing, right? As we'll hopefully see on this call, but using a workflow to automate something such as phishing or incident response, whatever it happens to be, it introduces a great level of consistency as well, right? So every time something happens, it happens in the same way. It produces the same output, whether that output's a ticket in a ticketing system, an email, a Slack message, whatever it happens to be, right? So this is, I always like to remind people of that as well, that it's automation is brilliant, but consistency is really good as well, right? So let me share this screen and we'll jump through this example. Let me put glasses on so I can see, which is always helpful. Let's do that. Okay, so here we go. So look, I'm not going to do any big introduction to Tynes, guys. I'm not sure if you've all seen it before or not, but basically, this is what a workflow looks like in Tynes. They're made up of these little boxes on the left-hand side, which are called our Tynes actions. So basically, each step in a workflow is automated by one of these actions here. So this workflow, as Cam has said, is a phishing workflow. It's a phishing workflow where we ingest an email, we do all the analysis on that email with our partner Recorded Future, and then we spit out some results at the end. So in this workflow, the results are sent as an email at the end. Lots of different ways to get information into Tynes. We're going to start this workflow with what's called our receive email action. As the name suggests, that allows us to ingest an email. So I'm going to just send get rid of that. I'm just going to send a suspicious email, if you like, to this action here. So how we do that is by simply just using this email address, which is tied to this action. So I have an email ready to go here, and sending it to that email address. So I've got a URL in here. I've attached a document to it. Looks a little bit shady, but we're going to send it and see what happens. So let's go back here. So it takes about 10 or 20 seconds to make its way through the pipes, but it will land here at this particular action. You'll see all these little circles appearing everywhere, as is happening right now, as if I timed that perfectly. So little circles like that basically indicate that each action has done its part of the workflow. Now, I hope you can see already how quickly all those circles appeared, right? So things are happening really quickly with Tynes. So let's, at a very high level, step through this and just show you what's happening. So our email gets received by this action. So each action does a particular thing. So this one, for example, is taking the email and splitting it into its constituent parts. And then what we can do is we can take any of those parts and send them to every subsequent action in the workflow. So at any point in a workflow, for instance, I could reach all the way back to the start and do something with this value here, for instance, if I wanted to do some enrichment with that, or I wanted to create an email with this value in it, I can do that. And so that's the great thing about Tynes. We're basically a workflow with a lot of actions connected together with events being sent between those actions. So what we're doing here, the very first thing, sending an email to notify security that there's a phishing event. So I should have an email in here, which I do. Just a little headline thing to let them know that something's being analyzed, and we'll get back to you with those results. Next up then, we're using something called our event transform. That allows us to manipulate the data that's flowing through a workflow. It also allows us to control the flow of data through a workflow. So what we're doing here is creating basically a lookup table, because what's going to happen in the analysis part of this workflow is that we're going to talk to Recorded Future. Recorded Future is going to give us all kinds of scores in relation to the email addresses, the URLs, the attachments, and so on. So rather than just passing those scores on to the results part of this, so the email to the security team, we'd like to make it a little bit more, I guess, user-friendly, a little bit more readable. So we create these little lookup tables here that say, well, if I get this score from Recorded Future, it means this. If I get that score, it means this, and so on. So we create those tables here, which we'll use later in this workflow. So then lots of things happening in parallel. Down this left-hand side, we're pulling out the domain of the sender. We're sending it off to one of the endpoints in Recorded Future. That's going to give us some results back, as we'll see here. So that's going to respond back and tell us whatever we want to know about the domain. So here it gives us a risk score, some evidence details, and so on. So lots of information coming back from Recorded Future. Here and here, we're simply doing a little bit of formatting. So we're defanging the domain, because we don't, in the resulting email at the end of this story, we don't want a domain that someone might click on accidentally. And then we're just doing a little bit of formatting, some results of the results, which we will use in our email further down this workflow. Similar thing here, we're checking the sender's email address. We're going to Recorded Future, checking to see if there's any leaked credentials associated with this particular sender. And again, some results for that down the end. Here, we're using a little bit of times logic. So we do that using our trigger actions. So the logic here is, are there any URLs in this email, or are there not any URLs? If there are, we want to do all of these things. If they're not, we simply do this next step here. So obviously there's one in this email. So what we're doing, again, using our event transform, we're pulling out those URLs. We're getting rid of any duplicates. So in case it's mentioned twice, we only want to check it once. And then assuming there's a list of those, what we do is explode that list. So in other words, we want to check each one individually. So we then pass those to Recorded Future. This time it's going to the URL analysis endpoint in Recorded Future. In addition to that, though, we're also going to send it to Recorded Future's sandbox, where we're going to detonate it. All of those things happen. And then we, again, do a little bit of formatting of the results. So defanging, a little bit of normalizing, and a set of results here. And similarly, using some logic again, pulling out any attachments. They're going to get checked in Recorded Future as well. So we're checking the SHA here. We're also detonating those in the sandbox in Recorded Future as well. And similarly, again, a little bit of formatting and another set of results. So at this point now, we have 4 sets of results, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what do we want to do with all of those? Well, the first thing we want to do is combine them all together. So we do that using an implode. So our event transform again in implode mode. So we bring them all together. We do a final little bit of formatting of the implosion, if you like. So what we've imploded, we do a little bit of formatting. And then we send an email using our send email action. So one of these, and you can see you can put a full HTML body in there. So what I should have, and that's taken, about 3 or 4 minutes for me to talk through. So in that time, all of those things I've described have happened. So we've split it up, we've sent it off to Recorded Future. All that analysis has happened. It's all been returned to us. We've formatted it nicely. And if this has worked, as I hope it should have worked, the security team should now have, which they have, another email with all the results in there. Now, this is formatted in the way I've chosen to format it. Anything you want to see or do here, you can do within time. So it's full HTML support for the body of this email. So if you want to put in nice tables or anything like that, you could do that as well. So as you can see here, it's given us kind of headline results at the top. So what the sandbox has said and what recorded future has said itself. And then we go into the detail of each one so you can see the results for the domain here. It also gives us a link to, if I wanted to look at the cards, let me just see, am I actually logged on here? Probably not. Oh, I am. Good. Um, it's one I didn't prepare, but I'm lucky it was just there. So there you go. So we have links to the cards and recorded future as well if we want to look at those. And then the rest of it, there are the attachments. So again, the two results from recorded future and recorded future sandbox, the leaked credentials. So thankfully there are no leaked credentials associated with my name, which is always good. Our defanged URL and the results about that as well. That's probably it, Cam. So again, the last thing I'd say about that is, whilst that's an email there, you could absolutely have that as in a ticket, in a Slack message, in a Teams message, in anything you wish. So anything with an API, we can integrate with. Hence, we can talk to anything. We can tickets, Slack, team, Cam, everything we can do. Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Thanks a million for that, Carl. Carl, if you just want to jump back into the story there for a sec, the phishing
I
story
love.
itself. So
Yeah.
obviously, folks, one thing that I'd point out here, just what Carl said, something was really important as before he jumped into the demo, which is like automation is one thing, tying tools together, and obviously saving time through automation is great, but the standardization, if you try and take two situations where one where you were trying to do all of this manually, then you try and multiply that by the number of emails that you would have to do that with, what's going to end up probably happening is, mental fatigue comes into the mix. You're starting to do things on a more ad hoc basis, and it just opens up phishing response to being far more error prone. Add all your other alerts into the mix, and it's a different story. So when you look at something like Times, it's a case of building it once so you can see the visualization of it and how standardized it would be every single time that you do it. So I think that point is a really, really, really important one. But again, folks, that's phishing response, including our friends Recorded Future for the enrichment component. If there is any kind of questions on this, pop them in the comments below. If there's any tools specifically or any kind of use cases you're interested in seeing in the series, let us know in the comments. And also, if you're looking to test out Tines, like you can see here, and obviously test out some of the stories from the library, I will leave the community edition in the comments of a lot of things to leave in the comments, I think. But anyway, folks, that is episode 3 of Automation Insights. Thanks a million for your time, Carl. Appreciate it, man. And we'll
No
catch you in the
problems.
next one. Be good.